Hey everyone, Munib here, co founder of Stacks. We're really excited about the launch of Stacks 2.0 blockchain. It brings apps and smart contracts to Bitcoin. We're in the school of thought that Bitcoin is like TCP/IP. It is that bedrock on top of which you can build the different things like smart contracts, light applications, and scale things on top. This is a very different point of view from the rest of the industry, where a lot of different projects are trying to bring smart contracts to other disconnected blockchains like Ethereum. We're big believers in Bitcoin and really excited about what we are launching with Stacks 2.0.
Stop. Quote, you only live once.
I
All
called
right,
So fake.
guys.
That's so fake. How did he get access to his parents' mortgage?
I call BS on that story.
That's so
automatic.
much
There's
bullshit. Yeah,
there's,
that's not
there's
real.
20 red flags in that story. We can go through that story and look at all the red flags that this is a troll story. But
We should do that.
Yeah,
but
let's
first,
let's throw that into the Zoom chat and we can get started here. Y'all, it's been an insane week. Today is the 28th, not the 21st, but man, it just feels like every single week this year there's something to talk about on Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour. I have an awesome panel here with me today. Let's just start off with some introductions. I'm CK. My job is to make sure the drinks are flowing and the conversation is as well. I'm going to pass it off to my co-host, Bran.
Hey everybody! Right now I'm dropping this link to this article we were just talking about, but what a crazy week! All right, what a crazy day! I cannot wait to dive into it with everyone. So let's just get it rolling. Let's do some intros.
All right. Well, I guess Nick, aka Tommy, at the studio. How you doing, man?
oh, you see Nick, but on the stream they see our real names. But yeah, I'm Tommy. I'm here with Bitcoin Magazine here in the studio. I'm the art director at BTC Inc. and Bitcoin Magazine and the Bitcoin 2021 conference. Super pumped to be here. Just got off marbles. We just gave some sats away to some special people, and thanks for joining if you've sticking around since then. But yeah, today was a complete crazy shit show of a day, and I'm excited to jump into it.
Yeah, well, we have an awesome panel to discuss it all. Let's start off with I think the only returning panelist is Kiara Bickers. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back. Yeah, my name's Kiara. I work at Blockstream. I'm a sysadmin over there. Not too long ago, I published the book called Bitcoin Clarity. And then I'm also here with my friend Julia, aka Brave the World, who's currently with the baby.
Yeah, who's that young Bitcoiner?
Nice.
Yeah.
She just ran away. Oh, and coming back.
Yeah.
Making Bitcoiners. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's go to our next panelist, Kaz Bycko. Why don't you introduce yourself?
What's up, everybody? And CK, I'm actually a returning panelist as well. This is my second time on.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh shit!
Yeah, great introduction, man. Yeah, so Kaz Bycko, Down the Rabbit Hole podcast, and just joined the team at Swan Bitcoin. I'm ready for today, so let's get through these.
Swan Force, nice.
Okay, I think I've made this mistake before, so maybe I should stop making the distinction of who's returning and who's not, because I'm not good at it. Let's go to someone I know who for sure is new. Patrick, welcome to the show.
hey everyone, Patrick, honored to be here. I'm Bitcoin Motorist on Twitter and Telegram, and this has been a very hectic day for me, as this is my third Bitcoin live stream I'm doing today. So this morning I was on Tone's live stream, and then almost back to back. As soon as I got off of Tone's live stream, I was on Ugly Old Goat's live stream, and I was like, yeah, I got another one tonight at 7. So really excited to be on with you guys and to discuss a bunch of Bitcoin stuff. A lot to discuss today. I'm very happy to be here.
Let's go. Thank you for joining us. And then
Make
last
sure
but
you
not least,
drink some tea. Keep the vocal cords nice and warm.
Will do. The Virgin Bloody Mary will have to do for now, but I do have some tea. Oh, great. Okay.
man, the wear and tear is really grinding on the Bitcoiners, but we're here for the long haul. Abby, welcome back to welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? My name's Abhay. It's Abhay, like a bay of water. You're all good. I'm talking to you live from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm here in my parents' house. Like a lot of people that moved back home during the pandemic nonsense. I'm building Rise. It's an awesome way to accumulate Bitcoin. And I've been in Bitcoin for the past several years and just been out here stacking sats, trying to build some generational wealth like the rest of us.
Amen.
Let's go,
Hear
Abhay.
that?
I will not forget that. And yes, stacking sats is a way to build generational wealth and to exit the system, right?
Yes,
A lot of people have witnessed that maybe the system really just doesn't have their best interests at heart. I mean, who here is intimate with Wall Street bets on Reddit in general? Like, who has been paying attention specifically to that Reddit page? Abhay, why don't you kind of give us the background of like what has gone down the last 10 days?
Yeah. Okay. So let me try to do this in the best way possible. So Wall Street Bets, for anybody that's unfamiliar, is this community of I guess as of today 4.5 million degenerate gamblers that are betting money on stocks on the internet. But they're not all degenerate gamblers. There's a lot of people on there that I think are really smart people. You see a lot of really smart fundamental analysis and just different kinds of analysis on Wall Street Bets. For example, this guy, his username is Deep Fucking Value, but he turned basically $50,000 into at one point $50 million by with GameStop calls. And the reason is because like he discovered that that GameStop was short more than the available float of the stock. So basically a short squeeze was almost imminent. And so he mobilized this community of people to buy GameStop. And the more and more that it went up, the more and more that they listened to him. And things like this, I feel like have happened in the past where like, you know, r/Wall Street Bets will pump different stocks and stuff like that. But this time, I think that a lot of it was personal for people because they knew that the people on the other side of the trade were these really big hedge funds. And kind of the ethos of Wall Street Bets is like the same fuck the establishment, fuck Wall Street, fuck the banks, fuck the hedge funds ethos that I think the Bitcoiners share in general. At least I think that, like, you know, back in 2008, a lot of us, our parents lost a lot of money. Some of us personally lost a lot of money, our family, our friends. And out of the same crisis that spawned Bitcoin, kind of spawned the Occupy Wall Street movement. And so like while millions of people like lost their homes, lost their livelihoods, their life savings, and were forced to rebuild from ash, the banks got hundreds of $billions in bailouts, and we paid for their mistakes. So all that degeneracy aside, like part of the ethos of Wall Street Bets is that the average person should be able to participate in a financial system that is level and that is that works for everybody. And so taking down a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund over the past few days was just a triumphant watershed moment of what I think has been this David versus Goliath story that's been brewing since 2008 and since this kind of all happened. But I think one thing that a lot of Wall Street Bets doesn't understand is that David in the story is kind of like, you know, fundamentally constrained because the system is rigged against him because we have this inflationary fiat money. And Bitcoin is kind of like David's secret weapon. And that's what, at least I've been trying to get a lot of the people on Twitter and Reddit that are commenting on what's happening with Wall Street Bets to kind of see that this same, you know, fuck the banks, fuck Wall Street energy is what powers Bitcoin as well, and powers Bitcoiners. That's my rant and my spiel, but I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Beautiful.
Who wants to jump in?
Yeah,
I think a lot
jump
of people woke up today. Oh, go ahead, Bitcoin.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, Kat. Yeah, no, I've just been talking about this for like seems like 3 hours today, but yeah, it's absolutely part of the same revolution, and I think that I saw some people on Twitter talking about this and saying that you know, this is why we need tokenized securities or whatever, and I think that's really the wrong lesson to learn from this. One important point that I want to make is that I think eventually these guys are going to we got Whitney jumping up on my lap. Eventually these guys are going to figure out that Bitcoin is where it's at. You know, every other thing that you could do, they're going to find a way to screw with you, but it's going to all go to Bitcoin. And the reason why I don't think tokenized security is the answer is because the reason why the average retail investor buys Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin, but buys stocks, is because they're told they have to invest in the stock market for their long-term retirement, and they're told that, you know, they have to beat inflation. But if you have Bitcoin, then you don't need to play the stock market anymore. Then it just becomes like playing poker. Sure, there'll be people who play the stock market, but it's going to be like, you know, someone who plays poker as a hobby or plays poker professionally. It's not going to be like everyone has to do it just to keep up with inflation.
I mean, that's the dream, right? Is the riskless asset being cash. Someone can just hold it and, express not wanting to have to take on risk necessarily to store value. Kaz, why don't you take over?
So I think a lot of legacy finance world woke up to and learned an important lesson that we've been talking about in Bitcoin for a long time, is that not your keys, not your coins. I think that happened, and that big moment happened for a lot of normies today. They realized that they're not in control of their brokerage account. They're not in control of what they own in their brokerage account, and you can sign a term of service and it can be sold without basically your consent. So I think it's not long before we can like steer all these people that are pretty pissed off at the world right now and Wall Street and hedge funds. I mean, I think hedge funds are obviously fucked up and corrupt, but wait till they figure out how fucked up central banks are. So I think they're close. They're very close. And once they realize that the best monetary asset in the world is Bitcoin, and there's only a certain amount of them, and if they really want to stick it to the man, then they need to buy Bitcoin.
Amen.
Kiara,
I feel like
do you
want? Sorry, go ahead.
Abhay?
No, I was
No,
gonna
go
say
for
like I feel like a lot of people are waking up to things. It's like you have to connect the dots for people, right? Like everybody realized like, oh shit, if I have my money on Robinhood, it's not really mine. They can do whatever they want with it. They can stop me from buying things, or they can stop me from selling things, whatever suits them in the circumstance. But that the concept of that is really monetary sovereignty. But if you say those words to the average person, they're like, what the fuck does that mean? That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean I can hold my own money and be my own bank? I think that's part of the uphill battle that we're fighting as Bitcoiners, is like everybody, it's like the perfect storm, right? Like all of this crazy shit is happening. It's unlimited money printing. The hedge funds are manipulating markets, except like the average person doesn't know that Bitcoin in a lot of ways fixes this. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that we need to figure out how to solve, is how do you present this to people in a way that works for them?
So I want to jump in, and then I'm going to give it off to Kiara, because I feel like she knows how to present Bitcoin in a lot of different ways. But in particular, I think like for the average person, they still don't get that Bitcoin's not a stock. They don't get that you don't buy shares of it. They just think it's like another stock, and for whatever reason, the company behind the stock is doing some crazy shit. That's like what a lot of people think still. And even if they know that Bitcoin's a cryptocurrency and not a company, they still don't even get like why it's different than a stock. So there's a lot of kind of a cognitive dissonance and misunderstanding out there still, especially with people who haven't really kind of done any due diligence on Bitcoin.
I think that probably the difference between this situation with GameStop and Bitcoin in general is that this situation is very short term, and Bitcoin is such a long term play that I think it's really hard for people to make that, like the public attention span is so short, right? So this story is really exciting. There's a lot of good memes around it. Like there's a direct enemy, which is like the hedge funds, the rich people. Like it's fitting a lot of like class warfare mimetics. But also on the right, it's sort of like, yeah, populism. And one of the things that I think is like the most interesting about all of this right now, like putting Bitcoin aside, is you can see that like the narrative of like right versus left isn't really holding up in this. It's like you have like AOC with Ted Cruz, and like these two different versions of realities are just like merging to be like, fuck the establishment. And I mean, I don't know how to spin it back towards Bitcoin, or if that's even really the what's
other than bullish.
Happy. What's that?
Other than bullish, that's exactly what we want to see.
That's bullish.
That's a
Fuck
great
the
point.
establishment. It's perfect.
That's a great point.
It's absolutely bullish. Like you said, it was a perfect storm. It's just a shit show. It's really fun for me to watch, but that's my easy take on it.
Well, yeah, and it totally feeds into the Bitcoin narrative. But in the zoom out grand scheme of things, in years from now, are we going to talk about the Robinhood GameStop fiasco in the context of the long story of Bitcoin? I don't know. It might orange pill people into Bitcoin, and people that kind of have been hearing about what is going on but didn't quite experience it for themselves. Now they are experiencing it firsthand because they can't buy more of a stock. They can only sell it.
Well, I'd be interested in hearing what you guys think about this, because like one of the things that I've noticed in terms of like the establishment trying to gain control of this is they were saying that the hedge fund like closed out their positions, and like there were a lot of articles that seemed to be fake. Like we started the whole conversation off with this like obviously fake propagandistic thing of like a guy like took his house, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's just so obviously fake that like no one can buy this shit. There was another one where they were like trying to spin it as if this is a hack. This is a hack on the stock market, which is like
it's foreign powers
taking advantage of people who don't know what a hack is. It's like
or
all
it's
the
the
people who
alt-right.
might.
Yes,
there was an alt-right one today.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Taking down a
like,
Jewish hedge fund or something. on
alt-right.
It's got to be it.
Those domestic
the
terrorists
alt-right
buying call
is,
options.
Yeah.
The alt-right play is tired out.
And no one's buying that stuff. That's
Well,
what Kiara's saying, and that's a very good point. Like,
I think retail
nobody's buying that nonsense.
Retail investors can become a new word for that. Yeah.
Well, so here's what I think is going to stick is, you know, the narrative is coming like to a full conclusion in some ways. I mean, we've had for the past 10 years this quantitative easing that fixed the system, quote unquote, but really all it did is redistribute wealth to the top 1%, and the stock market grew, and only the richest of the rich owned any of the stock market. The entire, you know, VC capital, you know, system was built to make sure that if you have more than $1 million, you're going to benefit from the system. And if you're an average person, you're kind of left, you know, to just buy stocks and hope for the best, buy index funds. Here we have the one moment, the one time that the retail investors outsmarted Wall Street and the whole system broke. I mean, literally Robinhood shut down. It is built to make sure that these hedge funds win and the retail investors, you know, pick up the scraps at best. And the fact that the one time the narrative flips, the entire system, you know, teeters on the brink. I mean, I heard conversations about hedge funds literally worried that their entire model had just been broken and that they'd have to shutter just from this one short squeeze, you know, scalp. So I think it's crazy to see, you know, the amount of backlash, the amount of things that have changed just from this one short squeeze. And I think people are kind of, I agree, like they're waking up. It makes sense. All of a sudden, the system, you know, seems even more broken than it did before to them.
So I guess the question for me is like, when is an authority going to come out and make something like really win over the hearts of the majority of people? Because I've already seen stuff like, I've seen articles that saying, well, they absolutely should shut trading down, right? Which is just completely absurd. It's like, it's so transparent to the majority of people. I mean, young people, Bitcoiners. So I'm not sure I'm like in touch with like the real audience, but you can see people are getting ratioed on a lot of the YouTube videos that suggest this. I hope this continues and they actually, you know, take it to the next level, which would be to keep doing this. But I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't know.
I think it's interesting because like that we always think that, oh, someone's going to show up and stop this. Someone is going to, and it's like they can't stop it.
We don't want them to.
It's not about direct stopping. That's not. It's not
realistically.
It's a spin.
Yeah.
Realistically, like, what can they do, right? It's like, okay, so you're saying that retail investors shouldn't be buying these stocks because they don't know what's best for them. I think that's bullshit, right? Because that is how the government is going to try to spin it, in my opinion. But if you think about it, like, even on Wall Street, there's really smart people that do a lot of really great analysis and a lot of good diligence. And then and that's like maybe like 10% of them or maybe 20% of them. And then the remaining 90 or 80% of them are just copying what the smart guys do. And so it's not like you have this elite class of like genius, like, you know, 200 IQ people that know what they're doing. A lot of them aren't that smart. And when you talk to people that manage money, you realize that like, these people are not geniuses. They're not that smart. And I think that one of the sticking messages will be that the average guy, like the little guy, is just as smart as the guy on Wall Street. And that just kind of empowers the Bitcoin narrative even further, that, you know, we don't need the central bank to tell us how to handle monetary policy and figure out how much money to print and who to give it to. We had a genius that already coded all that out, and we have geniuses today that are maintaining that system. So it doesn't really, it kind of just levels the playing field in one way or another. And I think that's what's going to stick.
My particular point is like, when you look right now, like Ted Cruz and AOC are in agreement, but when they start to talk, because they're talking about problems, it's really easy to agree on problems. The second the narrative has to switch into solution, that is when you're going to see the whole thing fall apart again, because the AOC narrative is going to be like, well, we have to have less freedom. And they may win that argument, right? So like when I think about these platforms that are closing down trading to markets because the hedge funds can't lose, I'm like, okay, well, when did this most recently happen? And to me, I'm like thinking about how people are getting banned from Twitter, and it's like, well, you can't have free speech because it's a private company. It's like, technically, aren't these private companies, right? So it could be,
Isn't
it could just
Fed?
be a matter of moments before someone writes the viral article that spins the whole narrative.
Okay, I think we need to separate the narrative and what's actually happening, because I don't think any of us knows what's actually happening. We know narratives, but one of the narratives is that Robinhood shut down trading because they're buddy with the hedge funds. Maybe that's what happened, but maybe they actually shut down trading on those particular stocks because they're actually having a liquidity crisis and they had to stay solvent. So it's just like when BitMEX went down back in April. Like, did they deliver, or whenever it was, April or March, I remember. But it's like, did they deliberately shut it down, or were they just overwhelmed, or what? So, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with Abhay that the little guy is necessarily smarter. I think a lot of these traders are morons, and they may have gotten lucky or they may have gotten wrecked. But the point is that I'm not saying that they're doing the right thing or they're doing the wrong thing necessarily. What I'm saying is you can't stop them. If they're determined to go out and trade and gamble, they're going to figure out a way to go out and trade and gamble. They shut down online poker, and what happened? Bitcoin took off right after that. That was in 2011 when they shut down online poker, and people had to go figure out something else to do to get their risk jollies, and then they went into mining Bitcoin or doing something else. So like there's no way to stop these people. You can come up with a rule, but everything is gonna lead eventually to Bitcoin, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's close, but I think we have a risk, and the risk that we're running into is, so we're building an anti-establish, like a fuck the establishment movement, you can say, is coming out of this. These people are pissed off, and they have good reason to be pissed off. So we can't just say that they're gonna come naturally to Bitcoin, because what I'm worried about happening is these people are gonna come in, the same people that are looking at the hedge funds and everything that's going on in financial markets and saying, fuck these people, they've rigged it against us. They're going to say the same thing about Bitcoin. They're saying Bitcoin is being bought by institutions. I'm going to buy this random scammy fucking alt, and they're going to go pile in on Dogecoin. So the narrative needs to be like, yes, people are waking up, but we need to lead them to the right thing, and make sure they don't get like rug pulled by some scammy alt and then be like, okay, I'm not going to touch Bitcoin ever again because I went down the wrong rabbit hole to start with. Because I feel like a lot of these people that are waking up today are going to have that same idea when they get introduced to Bitcoin and be like, okay, why would I go to Bitcoin?
Can I push back on you?
Can
I push back on you?
Yeah.
So maybe, like, Bitcoin at its heart is like this really kind of conservative thing. Like, maybe their heart's just not in it for that yet. Maybe they want to speculate on a shitcoin. Like, it's pretty obvious that that's actually what they want to do. So maybe why don't you think of like the shitcoins as extensions that eventually lead them to Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin ultimately is a tool, and the other things are just not the same tool. So if you ultimately want freedom, Bitcoin allows you the ability to route around the institutions, the system, a lot easier. Like, that's what Bitcoin enables. Like, that's replaceable. There is no alternative for that. So I don't know. Like, I kind of have a problem with the difficulty to see how all of this stuff leads to Bitcoin. It's not something like, hey, if someone is just completely turned off for crypto for a while, like maybe they just didn't do enough research. Like, maybe they deserve it, right?
Maybe they bought it at the top and lost a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Like, if you have that mental if you're unable to mentally adjust, like, maybe that's the market just teaching you something. So I don't know. I'm not mad about it, and personally, I think that it actually helps attract people to Bitcoin, not the other way around.
I completely agree. I wasn't trying to make it seem like I thought that it's not going to lead people ultimately to Bitcoin.
That's a great point,
I was just saying,
Kaz.
I think it's important that us as people in the space that create content, we need to take advantage of this opportunity, because a lot of people are waking up, and we need to use this opportunity to make it part of Bitcoin's history. I can't remember who said it was like, oh, is GameStop going to be part of Bitcoin's history? Well, yeah, everything that is a a major impact in financial markets should have an impact on Bitcoin's history. That's how Bitcoin became to be what it was, because it was birthed out of the bullshit that was the financial system. So everything that we go through until hyper Bitcoinization is going to be that way. So I think we just need to take it like as a part of our duty to lead these people to the watering hole.
2013 had Cypress. 2013 had Cypress. 2021 has GameStop.
I get what you're saying, Kaz, but like I kind of agree with CK here. Like, so and it's fitting because I legitimately just got a text a couple of minutes ago, and this guy said, "Where do I buy Doge? ... not on Coinbase or Robinhood." And I think that the thing is, people want to make money, and at the end of the day, if somebody starts going down the crypto Bitcoin rabbit hole, I think that yes, you're right. If you really go down that rabbit hole, all roads lead to Bitcoin. And I've been there. I think a lot of people have been there. I got into Bitcoin in 2017. I was a fucking degenerate shitcoin trader. I did it for like a few months, but then I quote unquote found the light, and now I'm stacking sats and I'm accumulating as much Bitcoin as I can because I've made my mistakes, right? Like I've done all of the things that you can do to lose money, which everybody kind of does, and you go through those phases and progressions. I think that you can't herd all of the sheep, and I agree. Like when somebody asks me like, how do I get into crypto or Bitcoin, I try to tell them all of the right information. You should stack sats, you should treat Bitcoin as a savings account, you should either dollar cost average, buy the dip, use Rise, whatever you do, you should do what you do to get your Bitcoin, and you should leave it there and not sell it, all that stuff. But not everyone's going to listen. 99% of people aren't going to listen to you. They're going to do what they want to do. And most of the time it's going to be that they want to trade or they want to go into altcoins. And you got to let them at some point make their mistakes, because at the end of the day, the people that, and it sucks to say this, but I think that it's not that people deserve to make the mistakes, but you can't save everybody. You got to do what you can do to save as many people as you can and show them the right way to do things. But you can't. It's not every single person's burden to take care of everybody else's problems.
Yeah, Abhay, I was completely agree with you, and I think it's like if you tell people not to do something, like if someone texts you and asks you about Doge, like I wouldn't tell them not to buy Doge. I would just, because if you tell them not to do something, they're automatically going to want to do it. So I would just tell them, "Oh, it's garbage. I'm not really interested in it. I only have Bitcoin. Like, or I don't know that too much about it. It started out as a joke. But here's the thing: when you exactly what you were saying, when you tell someone that Bitcoin is the only thing I'm interested in, or something like to that effect, what happens is they don't listen to you. They make their mistake, but then they remember, oh, Abhay told me 2 years ago. He said Bitcoin was the only one, and it turned out he was right. So the point of going out there and telling people that it's all garbage and only worry about Bitcoin isn't so much to convince people to not buy Doge. It's more to just get yourself on the record. Like, look, I said this in 2015, 2016. I've been saying this the whole time. That's the point.
It's also what the core meme is for.
Yeah, it's also like a core marketing concept, right? Repeated exposure is what drives conversions, right? You can't always be optimizing for that conversion. How do I turn this person into a Bitcoiner right now, today? It's like if you expose them to those concepts over time, over and over again, they're eventually going to get it. And if they make their own mistakes in the process, so be it. It's a free market, it's a free world, free country. Do what you want to do. That's how I think about it.
So, a like slight tangent to this point you guys are making, when we're talking about how are we communicating the strengths of Bitcoin to normie friends right now? I just wanted to pull out like one anecdote, which is I've been talking to my friends about this, obviously, and they're all loving the token Bitcoiner kind of giving the takes. And one thing that's been a aha light bulb moment for them has been when Robinhood stopped trading of GameStop, they were stuck. They couldn't pull their GameStop tokens off of Robinhood and put them on another exchange that allowed trading. They had to sell, wait 3 to 5 business days for it to hit their bank account, wait another 3 to 5 business days for them to send it back to another exchange, and then buy again. And what I like, the big aha moment has been saying, if you have Bitcoin, you can take it off that exchange and still have the Bitcoin. Like you don't have to have it sit on some trusted third party, because trusted third parties are security loopholes. And that has been a huge wake-up moment for people when they realize that they are totally at the whims of these exchanges. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
I think
Cyprus, exactly.
I think that's part of a bigger narrative, right? I think that, censorship and decentralization, whether that's like, in a way, Robinhood not letting you buy more GameStop is censorship. But I think that the way it works is censorship and decentralization are going to be some of the biggest driving themes of this decade, right? Like you have Twitter, and it's not even the company, right? It's some random VP at Twitter that is pulling the strings and making the decisions that decides like, hey, I think that it's time to ban Donald Trump. And whether or not you agree with that, whether or not it's right or wrong, it's besides the point, right? At the end of the day, that's censorship. And a lot of people on both sides of the aisle saw that, and it's a wake-up call to them. Like, hey, we're at the whim of these centralized institutions and platforms that do what they want to do. And you even have that with WhatsApp and Signal, right? I think it was Gladstein wrote an amazing piece in Time about why Signal and Bitcoin and tools like that actually help democracy rather than stifle it. Because when you use decentralized tools and when you give the power back to the people, right? Anybody can say whatever they want to on Signal, and nobody's ever going to get censored for doing it. Same with Mastodon and the bitcoinhackers.com email addresses and stuff that everybody has. Like the whole point of it is the fact that you can say what you want to and you won't be censored. Well, you can buy what you want to, you can trade what you want to, and you won't be censored.
I mean, not necessarily you won't be censored. Like, you could definitely be censored, but at the same time, like, sure, you have some way to like at least with Mastodon, you can plug into other servers. You can run your own server. Like, you have optionality. You have like modularity. Whereas like right now, you're kind of like people realize that they're locked in, and these companies have network effects, and they can censor you, and they're actually leveraging them against you. It's kind of like a Western version of a Cyprus moment. You're living in their world. You don't like own what you own. You don't nothing that is there is necessarily yours. Even like this MacBook I'm using, like there's a bunch of updates with the MacBook that make it so you have to it's always going to be pinging Apple servers even for offline apps, right? There's like a lot of things like that, like unless you're going deep and really what you're looking at, like the world is kind of owned right now. We're all kind of owned.
At risk of sounding stupid, could you guys explain to me what the Cyprus moment is?
Yeah, it may have been before your time. But yeah, I was around for that. So that was right before I got into Bitcoin, actually. I didn't get into Bitcoin because of Cyprus, but it was kind of like, it was in the news right before I kind of got interested into Bitcoin. But basically what happened in Cyprus is that the government of Cyprus, which is an island country in the Mediterranean, said that anybody who has more than $100,000 or 100,000 euros in the bank, they're gonna take a haircut. They're gonna take 5% of it or something. They ended up taking like half of it, yeah. And basically they took half of the money to. It was called a bail-in, and so people finally realized, like, oh, wait a minute. You mean the money in my bank account, the $200,000 I have saved up in my bank account isn't safe, and the government, if it runs out of money, can just come in and grab some of it because they, just because they want to, because they can. I mean, they do that already. When governments do that, they're usually printing money. When the government prints more money, your savings is actually being devalued. But when they do it more overtly, when they do it more flagrantly, it actually hurts. It hits a little bit different. When you can actually see them taking the money out, that's what happened in Cyprus, and that's why. And Bitcoin took off right after that. Bitcoin had its first or second major bubble right after that Cyprus incident happened, where it went from like $50 up to like I think $280 or something like that, and then it crashed back down to like $80.
Damn. Isn't it crazy how the halving is just so well timed with future macro events?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Every 4 years,
just
we all get
out.
fucked. It seems that way, right?
All right, guys. Do we want to keep going on this, or do you want to switch to something a little bit more positive?
Is there anything positive to talk about?
Should we look at that article to see if whether it's real or fake, or?
Right, well, I mean, I thought you guys were digesting this article already. Here, let's pivot while you guys look at that article. But our next topic is Ray Dalio and his firm putting out some content about what they think about Bitcoin. They did a little bit of analysis, and apparently the hearsay is that they're telling clients that Bitcoin's a wonderful invention. You know, they finally actually looked it up. I mean, Kiara, are you like, have you been following this news? Is it interesting that Ray finally got in?
I saw that in like, you know, and you're reading I was reading an article about GameStop and I saw it like in the sidebar. I mean,
That's
I've
the
watched.
world we live in today. This is sidebar news. Ray Dalio getting into Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, no, it was interesting. I remember watching some videos on his previous takes. He's never gone into depth, but he was very much like, who knows if Bitcoin's going to be overtaken because it might be Ethereum. And like, you could just tell he had never had someone who is extremely educated on the topic, like explain it to him, like slowly. And I think now I don't even know if he gets it, right? I can't see into his mind or anything like that, but it just seems like there's enough validation from like buddies in his circles that this is what's going to hit. This is what's safe to invest in for him.
Yeah, I don't think he gets it.
I don't think he gets it yet either.
I think it's bullish that he came out and said he thinks it's a great invention. That was like the first thing he wrote to his investors. I think that's cool, but he didn't follow it up with like that he basically thinks that it can get overtaken. He's comparing the network effects of a monetary network to like the network effects of a social network. And he's like, oh, you know, there's nothing to say that it can't get passed because that's how technology is. And it's like, well, that's not how money is.
If Bitcoin halts trading on GameStop, then maybe it will be overtaken. But Bitcoin doesn't do that.
Only 21 million GameStops.
Right.
Yeah. One thing that's crazy is
have you guys been able to see this article? It's actually not.
No, I can't get into it either.
I don't think I can speak intelligently to this at all.
Oh, the Post article, the New York Post article.
Says we can't find what you're looking for.
Get memory hold already.
All right.
Oh, see, I knew it. I called it. The second I saw that article, I said, this is bullshit. And now it's gone. So I knew it. I have a sixth sense for these things. It's like, let me tell you why there was too many red flags in the article. First of all, how does a kid who's 22 years old take money from their parents' mortgage? And how do they do it quick enough, with enough time, to be able to put it onto Robinhood in time to do this trade? Usually to refinance a mortgage, it's a month-long thing. It's like at least 2 weeks, maybe if it's fast. And then the other thing is the fact that it said you only live once. That's like a meme. That's what everyone says on Reddit. That's a YOLO meme. It's like no, this is trolling, and I'm so happy that I got proven right within 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
I think going back to Dalio real quick, like one point that I wanted to make is I think it's crazy. It's interesting the dynamic that's playing out right now, because you have this whole anti-establishment battle that I think that Bitcoiners are a part of. But at the same time, every time a new Wall Street name gets into Bitcoin, we're all cheering from the sidelines. So it's like a weird juxtaposition, or kind of like a weird scenario. But I think the way that I've been rationalizing that to myself is that, yes, like temporarily, I am very happy that Ray Dalio is saying these bullish things about Bitcoin. But at the same time, the reason is because that just legitimizes it for all the people that are looking at Bitcoin and looking at crypto in general that don't already know what it's about. If you hear these names that you recognize getting into it, then okay, yeah, there might be some value, and then you'll start doing research and hopefully going down the rabbit hole.
Damn. So Mark Cuban made an NFT the other day. Damn it. So
yeah. Mark Cuban is a shitcoiner. You can smell it all over him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how much time has gone between he was calling he'd rather invest in bananas than Bitcoin, and now he's minting a shitcoin on Rare, or he's minting NFTs on Rarible. It's like, I want to know how many days.
This is an interesting point actually, because while yes, Ray Dalio is making the classic monetary networks or a social network, therefore Bitcoin is MySpace, who's the Facebook kind of thing. That is a classic step on the progression, right? We've all heard it because we've all, thought it at some point, what's Bitcoin 2.0? So in my opinion, it's actually really bullish that was his take this time, because it's basically gone from Bitcoin's a bubble, it's, it's a scam, whatever, to like, oh, I could maybe look into this thing, to, this is really cool, but what's going to overtake it? Which means he's only like 3 steps down from being like a full maxi tweeting on Twitter. So I'm bullish.
He's just taking the slow crawl route to figuring out Bitcoin. But Ultimately, like I was thinking, the institutional thing is definitely a double-edged sword because, if I want to convince a boomer to buy Bitcoin, then I just send him an article about Ray Dalio liking Bitcoin. But that's not necessarily how you convince millennials to like Bitcoin. I think that the Wall Street bets energy and like the people being disenfranchised by that is how you get the millennials there. It's amazing that Bitcoin gets them both, but I'm kind of rooting against the boomers on this one.
Yeah, it would bring in boomers. So I'm not too familiar. I mean, I know who Ray Dalio is, but I'm not too familiar with this specific story.
I have a take on the establishment. Hey,
say that again, Julia.
I have a take. Sorry, I'm breastfeeding. Hi.
Oh my God.
This is a first.
This is the perfect time.
It's good that
This is a happy hour first.
funds and banks and all of these establishment organizations are getting into Bitcoin, because then they'll be lobbying the government for us to not make it illegal. It's good. We want the rich to want to be more rich by buying Bitcoin so that it's not illegal.
Yeah.
Hot take.
That is all.
Yeah, that's a good take. I agree with that. This is why I don't mind. A lot of times people give crap to someone like Michael Saylor or Jack Dorsey. I don't mind. I don't care that they're not they don't have some Bitcoin purity. I don't care about that. First of all, I think Michael Saylor is more pure than people think. I'll tell you that. And I think that the argument that Ray Dalio was making, based on what you guys told me, because I haven't actually read the article, but it seems like it's Metcalfe's law, which has to do with how robust the network is based on how many people are in it. And what's that famous quote that Michael Saylor always says about Metcalfe's law? He says that it's different with money than it is with a social network, because as he says over and over again, by the way, when Rupert Murdoch comes to Facebook, he doesn't bring a million of his friends with him, but if he comes to Bitcoin, he's going to bring $1 billion with him. So.
Totally, and I'm not like, I think that once they hold Bitcoin, they are aligned with Bitcoin. That's bullish, but I just want more millennials to get on board. Like, the rich get richer here. It's going to happen no matter what. That's just kind of like power laws. But, come on, millennials, stack some more sats already, please. The time is running out.
Well, in a earlier happy hour, we talked about if they're going to come after Bitcoin, they're going to have to do it by coming after Bitcoiners. And if there's more Bitcoiners, it's going to be harder for them to do that. And if there's more institutional Bitcoiners or whatever you want to call them, the rich Bitcoiners, then it's going to be way harder for them to come after all of us. So, yeah, I agree. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You just want, you want the millennials to stack some sats while they're still cheap.
The only problem I see with this is Bitcoiners are freedom-loving people, and the people who are going to come for it are the ones that like free shit and not freedom. So I've already seen a whole bunch of stuff about how the income divide is worse in Bitcoin, and people who buy small amounts of Bitcoin, they don't hold it for that long. So I think that will be a challenge in the future when it comes to you want millennials to buy Bitcoin now, but the second it goes up higher, they're going to pay off their student loans or they're going to do something like that.
Although the little guy does have an advantage. They can buy Bitcoin and they can do it on a whim. If I've never owned a Bitcoin and I decide tomorrow to buy Bitcoin, I can do it in one day. Whereas if it's a big institution that decides tomorrow to buy Bitcoin, it's going to take them a long time to get everybody on board, to get, all the so there is an advantage that the little guy has.
I just think the hard part about getting the little guy to buy Bitcoin is the little guy doesn't save. The little guy is living paycheck to paycheck. And, maybe it's a big thing to think about saving because, it's this new asset that goes up in value, but it's if you don't already save, if you already save, you can just start saving.
But Kiara, can I stop you?
Yeah, go for it.
A lot. I resent the idea that just because someone can F it up for themselves or they aren't saving, that Bitcoin isn't necessarily there for them. I think Bitcoin is there for them. And a lot of these people have the energy to go on Wall Street bets to figure out how to make their number go up because they feel like they're getting screwed. Their dollar is losing purchasing power. They're not earning more money. They're also rising to the street. They're also, voting in populists and voting in Democrats that are saying we're going to support you with the state. they're literally doing everything they can to try to fix like the pain that they can't even distinguish. And
No,
I think they will learn about Bitcoin over time. So
I'm
like,
just
I don't
saying that
know.
it wouldn't be where I would put my primary energy is to convince people who don't save to buy Bitcoin. You know, like, I think
Hey,
that's
but
an uphill battle.
But those are the
how
people
many
that need
stories of plebs that were like, you know, smoking weed and living the fiat lifestyle, and then they discovered Bitcoin, Twitter, and they threw shitcoins even, and it changed their life. Like, that's a story I hear all the time.
Hey, what does
Don't
weed have
disagree.
anything to do with that?
And we don't have a savings culture because we live in a fiat system.
Are we knocking weed?
Yeah, come on.
something
You
wrong
can
with
still
smoking
smoke weed
here?
and stack sats. Let's
You're
not
not
get it
incentivized
twisted.
to save.
There's a-
I take it back. I take
yeah,
it back.
that's-
Smoke
that's
weed
offensive.
420, y'all. Whatever.
Smoke them if you got them. Stack those sats.
No, weed's bad for you. Smoke cigars instead.
This guy.
Michael Saylor is going to have a conference next month where he's going to invite a whole bunch of publicly traded companies, institutions to try to show them how it is that he acquired Bitcoin. To try to, if some of these companies, some of these big institutions are interested in getting into Bitcoin, he's going to show them his roadmap on how he does it. And when I was talking to Ugly Old Goat earlier today, he said that he's very interested in seeing if he can go to that conference because he wants to know how is it that Taylor is holding his Bitcoins, because it makes a big difference if he's holding it with an institution where the government can go to him and go to Grayscale and go to all these big institutions that hold Bitcoin and say, hey, you guys have Bitcoin, it's ours now because it's now illegal and we're going to compensate you for the Bitcoin that you own, versus like how they did with gold in the 1930s, versus if Michael Saylor is actually holding it in a way where if the government comes up to him and tells him you better hand over your Bitcoin, he's going to tell them to go fuck themselves. That's going to be far more interesting. So I'm really curious to see how he's going to be holding his keys, and that's what Ugly Old Goat wants to do. He wants to go to that conference to figure out how he's actually holding his keys, if they're secure or not.
I think anybody can register for it. If you go on the MicroStrategy website and you just look at there's like a giant banner about it. I think anybody can go register and attend the conference itself. So like, and that's a really good question. I didn't really think about it like that. I just kind of assumed that he was using all of the institutional providers that exist now, the liquidity providers, custodians, all that stuff. But I don't know, the way that he talks about Bitcoin, he does seem like the kind of guy that holds his own keys. I just don't know how that plays out at a corporate level, right? Like, do you want a corporation, like it's the same thing as a corporation holding like billions of dollars of cash somewhere in a vault that they're responsible for the security for? So I don't know, but I'd definitely be interested to find out though. I would bet that most of the people that listen to that conference are going to go the average kind of like corporate institutional route and go to a liquidity provider and go to a custodian and just deal with all of it there.
So, I mean, if you look at the actual agenda, it's pretty much like a few hours of of like panels and MicroStrategy, and then it's just all of the institutional providers giving like their 30, 60-minute pitch. So I think that Abhay's analysis is probably spot on. With that being said, like it's going to be really interesting to see the corporate key holding thing kind of develop. I think it's going to become more and more important as, keys are taken away. Matt Odell on a recent podcast said that when you have your keys in a custodian, they're like pre-6102'd. They've already been 6102'd. You got to ask for them back. They're an IOU. So, that mental model is going to be a long and bumpy road, I think, for a lot of people and institutions.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where it gets really dicey, is like we want them to get in, and I think that they're getting in for the right reasons. And no matter how they do it, I think that it will be good for the asset and good for the space. But for the average Joe that looks at this and says, hey, all these companies are now buying Bitcoin, I need to do it too. You want him to eventually hold his own coins or her own coins. And I think that that's where it gets sometimes tricky, is that the example that all these institutions are setting isn't always what's best for the average person, right? Like I was listening to a podcast recently, like they're probably going to do it in multi-sig custody as well, I would assume. But that's not always the best model for like just the average person. And I just don't know how it's going to play out and how the signaling is going to play out at a consumer level.
Who wants to jump in here? Where do we take this conversation? We're still talking about Ray Dalio getting into Bitcoin.
Bran, you look like you have two Apple mouse on your head. What do you have to say? You look really smart.
AirPod Pro Maxes, something like that.
AirPad Nanos.
Man, you're fancy, bro.
Yeah. I splurged off of my shitcoining and got me a good pair of headphones.
Well, you look smart.
Thank you. It's stylish and smart, so it's really what I go for. But yeah, so I mean, I think if we're gonna look at this conversation from like a bird's eye view, sometimes I almost want to like pinch myself because it feels like you couldn't write a better scenario right now for Bitcoin. In the past week, we've had the largest group of retail investors that organize basically stumble upon the idea that the legacy system is broken. Concurrent to maybe one of the most famous value investors in the world saying that Bitcoin is now saying Bitcoin is a hell of an invention, on top of all of the money printing that's going on right now, and the Fed coming out and saying that they're going to keep making money print go burr. And I'm just like I cannot believe how bullish the world is right now for Bitcoin. I mean, this is like the absolute ideal scenario. And so I'm just wondering, like, where does Bitcoin go from here in terms of, what are the next narratives that are going to really drive adoption? What are we going to see market-wise from what's just happened? Are we going to see a huge pile on? Is Bitcoin going to trend on Twitter for the next month straight? Like, what are we expecting here?
Yeah, it is. And you're right. You're absolutely right, Bran, because this morning when people couldn't buy Nokia and people couldn't buy GME and AMC, Bitcoin actually pumped. Bitcoin was stuck at 32,000 for like a week, and now it's at 34,000. So, and another thing, another bullish news. I know I don't speak for the rest of you, but myself, I hate Coinbase. I'm sorry, I hate Coinbase. I have Brian Armstrong blocked on Twitter. I have Coinbase muted on Twitter. So I hate Coinbase. But the fact that Coinbase is going public is gonna add to this narrative, and it's gonna be in the news, and it's gonna be the first Bitcoin company that goes public. So it's gonna bring in a wave of people.
Here comes Julia. What do you have to say here?
I wasn't listening, so nothing.
Oh. Just put you straight on the spot. But no, I like this though. So there's a lot of bullishness for Bitcoin, right? There's a lot of reasons for people to be disenfranchised with the traditional system. Bitcoin is a safety valve. Us as Bitcoiners believe it to be a safety valve. But how do we capture that momentum? Do Bitcoiners have anything to do with this? What? I guess just to kind of build on what Bran's asking, how do Bitcoiners go from we are this funny stock that keeps going up to this is fundamentally different to GameStop. They can't stop this thing. You guys can get in on it before the bankers, and you can hold it and preserve your wealth outside of their control. How do we make that mental leap? Because that's a pretty big freaking leap in my mind.
Dank memes.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. Yeah, dank memes will definitely be a part of it. But what I think is crazy is you don't want to. Bitcoin fixes this, right? Bitcoin legitimately fixes some of these problems that we're seeing in these markets. But at the same time, you don't want to be that. You don't want to be that guy or that girl that is screaming Bitcoin fixes this from the rooftops when people are actually dealing with problems, or people are actually dealing with, not being able to get out of their position or get into a position or something like that. And yes, I think it's really healthy to figure out ways to channel this energy into Bitcoin, because you guys are saying it is legitimately the perfect storm. Even if we tried to come up with a better situation, I don't know if I'm
going to push back on you on that. I completely disagree. I think it's a perfect example. I'm going to push back and say I completely disagree, because I think it's a perfect example to use that scenario to give them one problem that actually fixes it. Bitcoin is the only thing that you can do that with. So why would you not give them the example in that time where they're experiencing something and say, okay, this is the only way to get out of that problem? I feel like it's the perfect time to do that. They're actually experiencing it. People are woke for one period of time against the financial system, and be like, okay, if you are having problems with this, here's the solution. And just
I think the problem is that Bitcoiners as a group, we try to shove it down their throats. Like, and
I do
that's
not try to
the
do
world. Sorry. Oh,
I
sorry.
do not try to do that.
I think everyone needs to stop and act like Bitcoin is special and you can't have any, and then
Yeah, that would definitely work.
Yes.
Yeah, some people just have a poverty mentality, you know, like before this whole like GameStop thing was happening, from what I could tell, people were screaming that this was like a market top, like they're freaking out. Like people who are in the market already aren't equipped to be in the market. Like why would you want those people in Bitcoin?
and it's person to person. So like I have people in my family who got into it pretty fast because they thought it was neat and I was into it. But those people were all into risk. They like, and then the people in my family who were risk averse, they only got into it recently for very different reasons. Like one of my family members is very religious, and she read the book that my Bible Bitcoin group wrote, and we make a religious argument for Bitcoin, a moral argument, and she was convinced. And that took 6 years, but like she wasn't interested in freedom from banks and like monetary policy or like Austrian economics. She just wasn't interested, and she was really worried about risk, and she didn't really want to hedge against anything. But then when she realized it's the more moral approach to money and economics, that sold her immediately. So it just depends. Not like everyone cares about what you care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think Abhay was saying that we shouldn't show Bitcoin as a solution to this. I think what the point Abhay was trying to make was that we shouldn't kind of like, make fun of people for it. Like if they're not able to buy, GME, it's like get wrecked. You should have bought Bitcoin. I don't think that. I think that's the kind of it was more of a tone thing than we shouldn't tell them the Bitcoin fixes.
We need more wholesome dank.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I think that Bitcoin is amazing, right? It's a very optimistic thing. And if you're a Bitcoiner, I think that you, like at heart, you have a lot of hope for humanity and for the future and what we can build here. And I think that's what we need to be selling. And that's what's really hard to get people to think
Not like
about.
doomsday porn?
Sorry?
Not doomsday porn?
Yeah, not doomsday porn, exactly. Like because
Save it for the bear
and
market.
it's so easy to get lost in that, right? It's so easy to get
I've
lost
never
in,
heard of this before.
like the financial system is going to collapse, everybody's going to lose their savings, the currency is going to inflate away, we're all fucked. It's easy to get lost in that, but I think that fundamentally you scare people away. And the positive message is showing people how the world can be better with Bitcoin, and not why is it not solely focusing on why is it bad today. I think that's how you get people, and I think that's what some of the best brands and some of the best people are doing well.
So CK's question was, what can Bitcoiners do to make to kind of further along Bitcoin's adoption? And I think all of these are really good answers. It's I do think that if we're going out there saying that the government's going to collapse and you need Bitcoin, otherwise you're going to starve, it makes it sound like we're rooting for that to happen. And frankly, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to get that type of a disaster. I think that it's going to be a slow-moving adoption where we're going to kind of slowly go into, and then like 20 years later, we're going to be like, remember when we said the government was going to come after us and crack down on us? And they never did. And they kind of just adopted Bitcoin as a standard. I think that's what's eventually going to happen. I don't think we're going to get that huge collapse, that rapture that a lot of Bitcoiners think it is going to happen, where the dollar just suddenly collapses. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that that kind of being good examples and not being jerks and kind of and not tolerating scams is important, because if we're like, oh, I don't want to offend such and such important crypto person because we have to call out scams. We can't be afraid of calling out scams, because if we don't say anything, then we're going to get lumped in with BitConnect. We're going to get lumped in with XRP, and we have to be saying, no, Bitcoin is different. We're not Doge, we're not Litecoin, we're not BitConnect, and we have to make that distinction. We can't just be like, well, I'm going to be open-minded and I'm okay with anything. I think that's an important point too.
So, to your point,
I'm
a little
not
bit,
open-minded.
CK, yeah, CK. Well, let me give you an open mind by pitching you on a story. So this is the Bitcoin magazine. This is how Bitcoiners should be talking about this right now, in my opinion. Because right now, if you look at, what are r/Wall Street Bets thinking? They're thinking, okay, Wall Street is broken, right? And what does that mean? What does that lead them to from a conclusion? It's to go into crypto broadly, go into the exchanges, go into DeFi, go into kind of this augmented Wall Street that, is trying to be built over there. And the Bitcoiners pitch really needs to be, the dollar, the entire system is broken. It's not just Wall Street. It's how did Wall Street get the power? It's all of the, it's the larger problem at hand. And so from my, standpoint, the message should be, not just how is Wall Street broken, but how was Wall Street able to break? And that should be the story that we're focusing on, because otherwise, they're just going to take the detour through, DeFi, and, some guy named Josh is going to be trading Doge for, hours a day instead of, actually trying to invest in, a new system that is built for them.
Yeah, I mean, again, like trying to convince people that the whole thing is broken, that the government institutions can't do it for them. It's tough. It's just gonna take repeated failure by those institutions, by the dollar, by all that stuff, and repeated seeing Bitcoin just continue to go up, to finally get those people to get off zero, or to learn about a new paradigm. So I don't know. It's tough. I still think that even though you don't have to like advertise shitcoins, I don't think you should ever advertise shitcoins. They're a terrible investment. But from a Bitcoin, what is good for Bitcoin perspective, what is good for Bitcoin adoption perspective, I just think that they're positive externalities.
Yeah, they might be. I don't really know. I mean, but I kind of like what Julia said at the end there. She was like, tell her, oh, you wouldn't be, it's not for you. It's, so this whole thing of Bitcoin being a Vemblin good, which as a student of economics, I think that's very fascinating, because for most items, the more expensive it gets, the less you want it. But a Vemblin good is different, because a Vemblin good, the more expensive it gets, the more you want it. The demand curve goes up, which seems to violate one of the fundamental rules of economics. And I think that's the case. The more the price of Bitcoin goes up, the more people want it. The more people like Ray Dalio would be interested in it. They weren't interested in it when it was $90. But now that it's pushing on, approaching a $500 billion market cap, or whatever it is, or eventually it is going to be a $1 trillion market cap. More and more people are interested in it, and you'll get more and more texts from people. I just got one actually while I was on the stream. I got a text from someone I haven't spoken to in a year and a half, asking about Bitcoin, and I sent him a link to this stream, so maybe he's watching now.
What's up, man?
I agree with you, man. Number go up technology is the best marketing Bitcoin has.
Yeah, absolutely. NGU. Yeah,
it's like the Birkin bag of the crypto world, right? Something like that.
So yeah, I wanted to get more from Tommy. Tommy, I feel like, obviously you try to portray Bitcoin from a very artistic perspective. You've been doing so for Bitcoin Magazine for a long time and are amazing at it. Like, how do you go about like making Bitcoin into a cultural phenomenon? Like, you're definitely part of that open source effort.
Well, yeah, it's definitely something that I struggle with, because Bitcoin is really supposed to be for everyone. So how can one person kind of put their subjective style into it and have that be the right answer? So that's actually part of why I'm trying to decentralize the art force of Bitcoin Magazine in the coming months, and kind of allow the community to submit their own art and stuff like that. But it is, so Bitcoin Magazine obviously kind of sprouted from a more cypherpunk upbringing of the anti-establishment. I mean, really the cypherpunk is a great way to describe it, I think. And then, does that attract everybody? Does the average person, are they turned off by that, right? So like, you don't want to go too deep into this crypto anarchy lane and scare away the average person that might be the unbanked person that really needs this the most. So it's a delicate balance of like, where what is the brand of Bitcoin when Bitcoin really is for everybody. I think that's what we're kind of trying to do with the conference, is make it a little more worldly and open for everyone, and maybe a little less cypherpunky. But in reality, the cypherpunk crypto anarchy mentality and just way of looking at the world is what Bitcoin is. And it's about, how do you teach that to people without turning them off and making them think that you're doing something dirty or illegal or something that's going to cause harm somewhere else, because that's what, the anti-Bitcoin thing, they'll start talking about how, it uses too much energy. There's a environmental aspect of this. So they'll come at us from any way they know how. So it's like, how do we come to the masses with a message that appeals to the masses, when crypto anarchy and the word anarchy in itself by default does not. So that's kind of what we wrestle with, as far as like artists in the Bitcoin space, or at least what I wrestle with. Like, where do you draw that line?
Tommy, you bring up a really funny point, which actually I hadn't thought about until just now. But last week on this show, I was talking about how one of my fears was that very soon, due to all the deplatforming of kind of the Capitol rioters and the alt-right and all that kind of stuff, that Bitcoin was just going to get lumped in with kind of that group.
Well, look at Rare Pepe's.
I was going to have to explain to my mom about like how, I wasn't part of that group, even though, the media all says that that's what Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
I feel like this week we kind of got handed a gift from God, because, now we get the Wall Street Bets guys all going to get lumped in with the Bitcoin train too.
Well,
and,
it sounds like they already tried to tie Wall Street Bets to the alt-right. I didn't see anything about that, but I mean, that seems like the playbook. It's like anyone that is freedom loving, and Bitcoiners are the epitome of that, they must be some sort of racist or something, something bad about that.
At the same time, we see a lot of people on the left who, their main thing that they're trying to prevent is people getting harmed, and they see a lot of the little guy and the blue collar worker getting harmed, and they're speaking out about this too. So I kind of agree with Bran that maybe Bitcoiners have just been, have been messaging this in a way that doesn't appeal to a cohort that we need to convince to get on board the Bitcoin train. But this is very much an opportunity to kind of realign with that cohort again.
Well, so I believe a couple weeks ago, you guys had on Katie the Russian.
Yep.
Yeah, and she told a story about when she was at a meetup in Boulder, how some guy was on a bicycle that just came by, and he said, "Oh, Bitcoin." He was asking what we were talking about, and when we told him Bitcoin, he's like, "Oh yeah, Bitcoin. It's bad for the environment." And I'm actually the person who first started talking to that guy, the guy on the bicycle that was going by. So he kind of was like looking at us, and I'm like, "Look, here's a guy." First of all, I thought he was homeless at first. He seemed like he was a homeless guy, and I'm never a jerk to homeless people. I'm always polite to them, and I always said, "Hey, what's up, man? What's going on?" So I'm the one who actually started talking to him. And when he gave that objection of it uses too much energy, we could have all been like, this guy doesn't get it, oh whatever, man, But no, I actually said, you know what? This is a guy. He's probably a good guy. He's probably not a jerk. He's not a mean guy. He has a legitimate concern about the environment, and we have to empathize with that. So I instead of trying to dismiss him and say, no, it doesn't use that much energy, I said, you know what? I told him this. I told him that what happens with energy, what happens with ruining the environment, is that people consume way too much. We consume way too much, and we don't think about the future. So the ultimate way to save the environment and to conserve more is to use a monetary system that is scarce and hard, so that you're not incentivized to go out and spend money as soon as you get it. You're not incentivized to go into debt. You're actually incentivized to conserve and to save money and to have more long-term thinking. So I think that when someone comes up with an objection to Bitcoin, we shouldn't be dismissive of it. We should take their objection at face value, and we should really try to empathize with that and try to come up with a thoughtful answer on to actually, no, Bitcoin, the very thing you're worried about, the environment, Bitcoin fixes instead of trying to just tell them, okay, well, see you later. Have fun staying poor, you know?
Dude, I agree 100%. And I have like a real life example I can give that I went through recently of this kind of exact same thing. So a good friend of mine, he's like a value investor, and which regardless. So he's trying to get into Bitcoin, and his biggest thing is that, oh, it's used for money laundering, and like that's and I don't want to be associated with something that funds, drug activity and all this stuff. And I had to, and like at first I got really triggered and I got really pissed off because it was the day that Janet Yellen talked about it, and I was like, dude, she's spreading all this FUD, blah, blah, blah. But I thought about it and I was like, okay, look, I understand why you think that, right? In the early 2010s, Bitcoin was used for crime. Like people were buying drugs on the Silk Road, for better or for worse, and that's probably why you think that. And he was like, yes, that's exactly why I think that. And then I was like, okay, look, but the reason that this is wrong is only like 1/3% of all, Bitcoin transaction activity was criminal in 2020. So the numbers go against what you're thinking, and what you're thinking is fine and it makes sense at a surface level, but when you dig deeper, these are the facts. And I explained to him how on a public blockchain, like it really just doesn't make sense for you to launder money using Bitcoin. It's just not a good way to do it if that's what you wanted to do. And I talked him through it and he understood. But if I had gone to him and told him like, dude, you're an idiot, Janet Yellen's an idiot, you don't understand, like these are the reasons why, he definitely would not have done it. But he bought Bitcoin a couple of days later, and I think that, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I think I handled that well. And I think that's how we should be thinking about it, is like, why does the person have this objection? And how can you kind of tell them that, like, look, that's a normal thing to think, and I understand, but this is why you're mistaken, and kind of show them, rather than like, as I was saying earlier, like shoving it down their throat and like making them feel bad for having an opinion that disagrees with you.
Right. Oh, and by the way, the guy on the bicycle, I said he looked homeless. I don't think he was. I think that's just how people dress in Boulder. I'm sorry.
A lot of Bitcoiners do.
Yeah. Now, so Tommy, you talking about the conference? Are you talking about the Bitcoin 2021 conference? Is that what you're talking about? Is that still going to be, or where is it going to be?
Say that again.
Where is it going to be? Is it going to be in LA? 'Cause I thought it was going to be in LA.
It's funny you should ask. We're going to make that announcement on Sunday. So,
okay.
I mean, I'm not going to be able to spill the beans.
No, I'll wait till
Texas,
Sunday.
Baby.
I'll wait till Sunday.
Not a bad guess.
I actually registered for that conference because I was like, well, if it's going to be in LA, there's no reason for me not to go, because I have family in LA. So if I go to LA, I can stay for free. But it looks like I'll be probably shelling out for a hotel, unfortunately.
It's a real possibility. But stay tuned to Bitcoin Magazine on Sunday.
Let's shimmy back to the conversation of like, how to communicate Bitcoin. Actually, today we just released a podcast.
Guys, right before you guys get into this, I'm just going to say that I'm going to take off. But thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely,
Thank
you.
Guys.
Good talking to you, Kiara.
I'm going to go have dinner.
And you have an awesome book. I love your book.
Oh, thanks. Bye, guys.
Yeah. Bye. Yeah, I think your book is Bitcoin Clarity. Really, really good book.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet. I need to read that.
So yeah, winning hearts and mind for Bitcoin, right? It's really about getting on their level, and that's what the podcast is about. That's what the article by Peter McCormick and Andy Edstrom that came out on Bitcoin Magazine is about. And it's not about like being wrong. It's about being strategic with your communication, right? If you're talking to someone who is worried about the energy, maybe ask them like, how do they plan on solving the energy crisis? Because like we're polluting, we're destroying the environment. We know that. Like, hey, you can make the government have create a bunch of regulation, which we know people break anyways, and you can't get third world countries to, adopt because they have an incentive to pollute more and do whatever's cheapest. Bitcoin kind of offers a carrot. Like there's a way that you can frame it in a way that Bitcoin is a positive opportunity to achieve your goal of saving the planet. And again, I think sometimes Bitcoiners have gone so deep and they understand so much, and they're unwilling to like let people bridge over from their incorrect worldview to a more accurate worldview.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's all about like, you really have to get on that person's level and like try to put yourself in their shoes and think about why do they think what they're thinking, and how can you resonate with that. It's just like selling anything else, right? You can't just like if you're selling a product, you can't just like you can't just scream at people and tell them that they're idiots for not buying your product and how they're doing things wrong. Like you kind of have to tell them, hey, this is the problem that you're having. This is how my product fixes it, and this is what you get out of using it. I think like it's a simple mindset, and I don't know if you guys are on Clubhouse, but like that's one of the qualms.
I was literally just about to bring up Clubhouse right before you started speaking.
It pisses me off,
because it's
man.
the perfect way to evangelize the Bitcoin message.
It is, but I think it's being done wrong. Like I think that a lot of the people that you see super actively on Clubhouse, like I think that they push their message from a perspective of understanding, as CK just said, understanding so much about Bitcoin that they make it unrelatable to the average person. Like when you say things that they say things that go like way over people's heads, and they say things that would turn the average normal person away, as opposed to like, how do I make this something that's related to the average person? And I know like, but like some Bitcoiners, like they don't like people like Pomp and stuff, but I think that people like that just explain it in the most simple terms and try to explain it to a layman, I think they do a much better job of actually converting people over than some of the people that you see on Clubhouse that just hit people with the entire book and say all of these things that just you overwhelm people, and you don't do it in a way that's relatable.
There's a couple of mistakes a lot of people make, and this isn't just with Bitcoin. This is with any sales.
Right.
Not Bitcoin is sales, but basically, yeah, telling someone they're idiots for not getting it. It's true, but we shouldn't say it. The other thing is pleading and begging people. Oh, every time Elon Musk tweets, oh, Elon Musk, can you please buy Bitcoin? It's like I'm not going to beg anybody to buy Bitcoin. That's not how you convince someone to buy something. It's the takeaway, which is you wouldn't be interested in this. That's a classic sales tactic. It's probably not for you. It's more for people who are interested in sovereignty and freedom and not to be controlled by another authority, something like that. I think it's more than trying to you can never convince someone to get into Bitcoin.
It'll turn all your
you have
bad
to
feelings
them,
into
right?
good feelings.
Yeah, you
kind of have to make them think that they thought it first.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you have to like, you have to connect the dots in a way where it's like it makes it so painfully obvious that it's like that they feel like you don't have to tell them they're an idiot. They have to feel like an idiot for not getting it sooner. I think that's like how we have to do it. I think that it's crazy because there's so many opportunities on places like Clubhouse and stuff to really evangelize Bitcoin and get a lot of people into it. I think that the execution has been pretty poor in general from the Bitcoin community. I think we all need to figure out how to just relate to people and be more relatable.
Let's talk Clubhouse after this. I want to hear what everyone's like. Hey, someone who doesn't know shit about Bitcoin comes to you. Hey, Bitcoin, this thing, I've been such an idiot. I didn't listen to you when you told me about it before the halving, blah, blah, blah. They come to you. They're not really convinced, but they know that number has gone up. They think it could go back down. Like, what do you tell them? What's the first steps? For me, it's usually like, do you have Cash App already? If the answer is no, then I have a handful of exchanges that I will recommend. But if they already have Cash App, then I'm not even trying to fight that. I'm just like, oh, cool, you got Cash App. Just scroll to that tab. There's a little B there now.
Let them stack the sats and then figure out how to actually
and then
own
hit
them.
the auto buy. Hit the auto buy for whatever doesn't matter to you. How much do you spend on lunch a week? Okay, just take one lunch and put it into Bitcoin every single week.
Stop eating.
That's my pitch.
Just don't eat anymore. Stack sats. That's my pitch.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to put it into a small perspective. I also tell them, don't think one Bitcoin, $30,000. That's 100 million sats. You can buy 1 million sats for $300. That's my 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
I usually start by asking how many chairs they own, and
do you have more than one pair of pants? Sell those motherfuckers.
You're gonna need to give her all those.
That's right.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with CK. I just try to get people to get it as quickly as possible, however that may be, whether if they have something set up, and just get it in their hands. because that usually leads them down the rabbit hole. Once they actually own something, they're like, okay, like I need to like satisfy like this, like what the heck is this that I own? So then it leads them down the rabbit hole, and it's just the best way to do that is just to get it in their hands as quick as possible, I think.
Yeah. Cash App is a really good option.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't like Cash App because of Jack Dorsey, but it works. The app works, which is 90% of it. The fact that it works and there's no shitcoins on there, well, I mean, well, sort of, yeah, but there is no shitcoins on there. It is actually a really good thing, and a lot of people do use Cash App already, so that's a good point. But yeah, get off zero. I mean, I've told people, hey, every paycheck you get, throw a little bit in there, $50, $100, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know. Like if someone comes to me and they tell me, look, I should have listened to you, or hey, I did listen to you. I bought some Bitcoin. Now what do I do? It's gone way up. I mean, I don't really. I'm like, I don't know. We'll buy some more. The thing is, people don't want a simple answer. They always think it's more complicated than it really is. Like they think you're supposed to do something special with your Bitcoin. They don't know that it's just simple as just buy Bitcoin, DC, dollar cost average, and people don't want to hear that. They think there's always more to it. It's like, no, what about this other thing that I heard? What about this other? I heard Google is partnering with some new shitcoin. It's like, no, it's like people they always want to do something more complicated than what actually they need to do.
No, I definitely agree. I think people make it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. So when I do this, like first I tell them to go to joinrise.com and join the waitlist. But beyond that, what I tell them to do is, number one, stop thinking about it as a trade or as an investment or as a get-rich-quick scheme. Think about it, and depending on the person, I present two mental models. If it's somebody that really understands finance and really understands markets, a pitch that I've been doing that works well is think about this as insurance, right? So to give you a real world example, two of my buddies work at Citi, and they're both like associates there. So I was talking to them, and the way that I pitched it to them was, your entire life is kind of tied to this existing legacy financial system, right? And over the past, since 2008, you've noticed that shit is kind of going crazy, that the numbers don't all add up, and that things are getting more and more crazy every single week, every single month. And a way for you to hedge that risk is to buy Bitcoin, because it's the only asset in the world that is fundamentally uncorrelated to the political and economic decision-making process that runs markets, right? The central bank runs every single market because they can print money. And so it's the only asset that's fundamentally uncorrelated to that. Don't think about correlation in terms of like, oh, like, are these two assets correlated in terms of the price? I'm saying at a fundamental level, it's uncorrelated. And so that's why it's like the only thing that is going to survive if what you've invested your life into blows up. And so I tell them, if you're buying insurance, if you're buying life insurance, if you're buying home insurance, if you're buying car insurance, it makes sense for you to insure your wealth and insure your money against a collapse of the fiat system. And so if you're making a couple $100 a month car insurance payment, you better be making a couple $100 Bitcoin insurance payment and stacking sats. And so I think that's a narrative that works really well for people that understand money and markets. Now, for everybody else, I just tell them that to treat it like a savings account, right? And to treat it as you're saving in the currency of the future. The currency, if you have a savings account right now that's in the United States dollars, it's losing money over time. People they understand inflation at a high level, but I don't think that like they really understand why it happens. So I try to talk to them about the Cantillon effect. I try to tell them how money printing works. And it usually ends up being a pretty long conversation, but at the end of the day, they end up getting it. And they commit to putting at least a little bit of their money into Bitcoin. And I just try to tell them it's not a trade, it's not an investment, it's a savings technology. So those are the two narratives that work for me, are Bitcoin is insurance and Bitcoin is savings.
So if I can jump in, I think you bring up a really good point, and it's one that we've kind of danced around a little bit. But I'm going to, once again, this is 2 weeks in a row, tie it back to Judaism. Because Judaism is the original anti-fragile system, all right? And in Judaism, there's the most important story that you tell, which is Passover. And what's the story of Passover, right? It's the story where God gives the chance for the Jews to escape slavery. and the Jews had to drop everything they were doing and get the heck out of there. And you get to this point where you're celebrating, where you tell the story to the 4 children. And the idea is that you have to tell the story in 4 different ways to the 4 different children who have 4 different personalities. And there's the smart child, the dumb child, the wicked child, and the innocent child. And so, I think that the lesson to be learned there is like, you really do have to pay attention to who you're talking to, and to borrow from a completely different side of the table. Bitcoin is that elephant, and we're all the blind people trying to feel it up, right? And figure out what it is. And so I think, the mistake is to ever have just one go-to pitch, because everyone will understand Bitcoin in a different way based on their own experiences, their own understanding of the world, their own current problems, their own, just how they're feeling. And so I 100% agree. You have to kind of have like a much more flexible way to talk about Bitcoin based on who you're talking to, because if you don't, then, the information's not going to connect. It just won't connect.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's, you really have to craft the narrative to the person. It's tough. Like the same, there's no formula for how do you orange pill someone, right? And I think that's something that, going back to Clubhouse, I know I keep bringing it up, but I think that's what like a lot of the people in Clubhouse do wrong in these rooms, is like they spit the same thing. It's like the same narrative over and over again, and it doesn't always like address that person's questions or like where that person is coming from. And so I think the more relatable you can make it and the more tailored you can make it to that situation. And obviously it's tough when it's like a random person on the internet, but I think we can do it.
So let's talk about the next topic, which is, maybe the original easy way to get Bitcoin is Coinbase. A lot of people, although Coinbase has kind of gone astray these days, credit Coinbase for, being that accessible way to stack sats in the early days. They announced today that they are going to be doing a direct listing and going public in that fashion. So that's different than an IPO, but they are going public still. Obviously, no matter what you think about Coinbase, they are an important company. They hold an enormous amount of Bitcoin, both on the exchange, but also as a custodian for things like Grayscale and other, large participants like, potentially apparently Michael Saylor purchased a lot of his Bitcoin there. I'm assuming him and MicroStrategy are using them for some custody at least. This is a big moment of legitimacy for Bitcoin. This is kind of like the first Bitcoin company, even though there have been others that have gone public. Who has an opinion about Coinbase? Let's go to Kaz.
So the first thing I was going to ask is I didn't catch this. I heard something, mentioned about Coinbase today. Didn't really pay attention to it, but so they're doing something different than an IPO.
I mean, it's like what Spotify did. It's a technicality. Don't worry about it. They're going public.
Okay.
They're going to be on all your
public.
brokerage.
Okay.
There's going to be a Coinbase ticker. Yeah. So they're just making next steps.
I mean, I'm pretty vocal. I feel about Coinbase. I think it's, they're gonna go public. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. I'm honestly kind of dance around this question just because I don't really like it too much. I'm gonna be blunt, but I think overall it's gonna be good for the space for them to go public. But Coinbase is, not my favorite place to buy Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, yeah, don't buy your Bitcoin on Coinbase. Don't like that. Coinbase is not part of my recommendation list. We can just be honest about that. You don't have to dance around it. We don't have to say nice things about Coinbase. There's a reality, though. Coinbase is going public.
They're going to go public.
A lot of people that buy this stock. There's going to be a lot of thirst for other ways to get exposure to Bitcoin. And you want to hear something hilarious is I was talking to Brian Estes, who is a big investor and is involved with several different funds. And he was trying really hard to get early access to Coinbase back in 2016, their shares, and he ended up buying them from some early employees. But his Coinbase shares have not outperformed Bitcoin. So even though there's a lot of like desire for people to get like the Bitcoin adjacent investment, like buying and hodling Bitcoin is still the best way to get exposure to this thing. But
right. Well, what is their business model? Like, what is the Coinbase business model is to create a bunch of shit coins. and that's how they make their money. So if you're going to be investing in the shares of owning a company, like you're investing in the business model of it. So it's like, I don't know, if you're a hardcore Bitcoiner, you're probably not going to be investing in Coinbase just because you don't believe that it's going to, one, outperform Bitcoin, and two, it doesn't agree with the principles of Bitcoin. You know?
All this
all that being said, and I don't mean to play devil's advocate. Look, I never tell a single human being to go and buy Bitcoin on Coinbase, because I don't want them to go into this shitcoin casino and like see this, hey, buy CeeLo gold today, and like in huge letters across the top. I don't want them to do that. If I'm going to send someone to go buy Bitcoin, it's going to be somewhere that's Bitcoin only. But here's the thing, like, you can't just dismiss them as a company. It's literally the OG like consumer product for Bitcoin, right? They made the simplest experience for any human being to go and buy Bitcoin and any other crypto asset that's listed on there. You can't just dismiss that and write that off because you don't agree with it. Second, I also think that it's not fair to like just
I didn't write that off. I totally gave them credit. I said it's overall good for Bitcoin. I said overall, I just don't agree with Coinbase. I agree.
I think we're on the same page. Like, I don't agree with like their ethos, right? But the other thing is, they're bringing a lot of people into Bitcoin, right? And I think that the way to look at it is, it goes back to a conversation we were having earlier. If somebody gets into crypto and their first buy is Ethereum, or, you know, God forbid, XRP or some other nonsense, I think that they're going to make their mistakes, and they're going to eventually, if they decide to keep going down the rabbit hole, all the rabbit holes point towards Bitcoin, and they'll get into it at some point. So in that sense, Coinbase is good for Bitcoin. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that Coinbase is also one of the largest institutional platforms for trade for Bitcoin liquidity, right? And also for Bitcoin custody. Like, they bought Zappo, which was one of the biggest Bitcoin custodians, started by Wences like way back in the day. So they have this entire side of the business that caters to Wall Street and caters to the institutions. And I also think that's not something to write off. I think that that's potentially an even bigger part of their business than just the consumer stuff that they do, because on the consumer side, I feel like they are losing some money here and there. If you think about it, they have all of these dead shitcoin markets that nobody is trading, but they have to keep them up, and that takes up server space, that takes up runtime, that takes up resources. And so I think that they are going to make a bigger and bigger push towards becoming like a place for institutions to get into Bitcoin, and also a place for consumers to get into Bitcoin. And that's where I see it going. Now, as far as just the IPO goes, I think it's going to pop. I mean, not financial advice, obviously, but like, I feel like every single IPO in this type of a frothy market is going to pop. So all the retail investors, all of the Wall Street bets bros are all going to buy it, and it's going to do well, and it's going to make a lot of people a lot of money. Whether or not you ideologically agree with Coinbase and what they do and their mission and Brian Armstrong, I think is important, but not material to the IPO itself.
I would completely agree with that.
So, yeah, you know, I would say my thoughts are, for Bitcoin, this is short term, bullish. Long term, even more bullish. Because on the one hand, you've got now a stock that, you know, Joe Schmo, even your grandma, will kind of get like what they're buying here with Coinbase. Like, it's a stock. And yeah, they're not buying Bitcoin, but they're increasing the valuation of Coinbase. And other people who hold Coinbase stock will sell it and buy Bitcoin at some point, right? Like, you're putting money at least adjacently into the system, right? That's the one hand. Now, if you look at the long term, Coinbase, you know, you may disagree with their ethos, you may disagree with the fact they have shit coins, all that kind of stuff. You know, Brian Armstrong had, you know, differences in the scaling debate, yada, yada, yada. He has reasons that he's a little sour about Bitcoin.
He still doesn't get it, too. Bitcoin. He doesn't get it, though.
Coinbase is an ally to Bitcoin, and this goes back to Kiara's point earlier. You know, when shit hits the fan and the regulators come, you know, knocking and trying to take down Bitcoin, having a multi-tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars company that's publicly traded, and, you know, tons of retail and hedge funds have stock in Bitcoin, that's going to make it all that more difficult to really try and, you know, bring down the system and rein it in. So, you know, that's a powerful ally. So I'm really excited about it, especially from a long-term view. Go ahead.
So, I mean, Yo, and I want to let Bitcoin motorist get in because I know he has a deep disdain for Coinbase. Personally, for me, like I've said this multiple times, Coinbase is the AOL of Bitcoin. So they are the AOL. They were great. You know, AOL was great for getting people onto the internet, but ultimately their model was broken, right? And to be honest, like Abhay said, there's just so much more efficiencies in going Bitcoin only. Coinbase is making all of their money from institutional players getting into Bitcoin. Like all this other stuff is just a weight on their shoulders, and they're not focusing on the core competencies of Bitcoin. They're not going deep on Bitcoin. They're not offering advanced Bitcoin features like Swan, River, other companies that are going deep on Bitcoin, Strike. So I just think that they're going to get disrupted. I agree with Bran, bullish and bullish. But to be honest, like Bitcoin, everything's bullish for Bitcoin. Like this is a meme for a reason.
Yeah,
Everything's bullish for Bitcoin, but let's hear
I
motorists.
really no thanks. I really like what Abhay said about how they got kind of screwed on their own, you know, kind of maybe to a much lesser extent than what happened with Cryptsy. But yeah, absolutely, they're the AOL of Bitcoin. I've been saying that since 2013. Yeah, and what Bran was saying is that the government's not going to be able to stop. I mean, we already know the government can't stop Bitcoin, but forget about the 6102 attack. The 6102 attack is going to be impossible with a publicly traded company like Coinbase on there, because the government can't just go in there and shut down a publicly traded company without compensating them if they haven't broken any laws. Now, if they've broken laws, yes, but they haven't broken any laws yet. Same thing with MicroStrategy. The government can't just go there and take MicroStrategy's Bitcoin without compensating them. And if Bitcoin is worth, I don't know, $500,000 a coin, let's just say, whatever. It doesn't have to be. It has to be some big number. They're not going to have enough money to compensate them. You know, they could, or if they print the money to compensate them, that's not. It's basically the money's going to be worthless. So yeah, this is good news for Bitcoin. Coinbase going public, and you know, I'll look at the stock. I don't know if I should gamble on a shitcoin or not, but I'll take a look at the stock. But I probably won't buy it. But yeah,
it's better shitcoins.
Yeah.
So
and it's very similar to AOL in several different ways, because people didn't really know what the internet was when AOL was what they knew about the internet, you know. And I think that a lot of times people don't really know what Bitcoin is. Like we said it earlier tonight, they think it's a stock because of, you know, their experience with Coinbase, or they think they should diversify into multiple different Bitcoins. So I think that it's very, very similar to AOL in multiple ways that people a lot of times don't think about.
One thing that I'll add, and you brought up Michael Saylor a few times. I'm a fair weather Michael Saylor fan, but what I will say is that he's brought up some really good points that I hadn't thought about before. And one thing that he's brought up that I really appreciate is talking about how, you know, when he talks to people in the industry, quote unquote, you know, like Wall Street, they want to buy Bitcoin, but they can't because of their charter or because of, you know, the kinds of assets they're allowed to interact with. They can, some of them, buy stock. And Coinbase is a way for them to like buy Bitcoin without buying Bitcoin. And so I think there's a lot of pent up demand for Bitcoin that can't be reflected in the price because, you know, there's this level of abstraction from their ability to participate. So
the little guys have a chance to get in. The little guys have a chance to get in, which is good.
Yes, the little guys get in first, which is, yeah, I mean, that's awesome. You know, the dream is someday dumping on Goldman Sachs, right? Like that's what everyone, you know, really wants to stay up at midnight, you know, on a weekend while Goldman Sachs isn't allowed to trade and see, you know, their holdings just, you know, disappear. So yeah, I mean, I think that like this is just so bullish, and I'm super excited. I'm happy for Coinbase, even though, you know, they have their shitcoining, and I think it's a huge thing for the industry.
I want to hear from Tommy just because he hasn't commented about this, but I do have some exciting and frothy news about Robinhood and GameStop silencing.
Yeah, did you see the letter from Congress to the AG? Is that what you're
yeah, no,
about?
that's what I was gonna drop. Yeah, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, Flip sent it to me over here on the computer that's running the stream. And I just read it real briefly. Yeah, I mean, it actually, does it call for any action, or, because it starts with, "I am greatly troubled with the events that have unfolded on Wall Street and demand action from the U.S. Department of Justice." So I guess they're demanding action that, this insider, monopolistic trading activity is, it's out of bounds. So we got a member of Congress, Paul Gosar. I'm not sure which state he represents, but yeah, writing to the acting attorney general about today's Robinhood market fuckery. That's a big announcement. I don't have much to say about the Coinbase thing. I think Coinbase IPOing, like, you could say it's a way to tangentially invest in Bitcoin, but like we've all discussed, like, they're deeply entrenched in shit coins. Coinbase will always be one of the OGs in the space. I'm not going to talk bad about them here, but I think this Robinhood thing is bigger news for today. And now we got Congress acting up against it.
Could we clarify a bit what's going on with the Robinhood? I'm not fully tracking.
So
Tommy,
do you know more than I do, CK? Because I literally just got this letter sent to me.
Yeah,
and I read
maybe
it.
I do know more.
Right.
So I mean, long story short, there's this Reddit group that is getting GameStop to Moon, and Citadel and Melvin Capital and other large funds had a very large short position against GameStop, and they're getting wrecked, like, to the point of like filing bankruptcy,
Well,
all the way done.
I think the juicy part is that Melvin Capital and Citadel are part owners in Robinhood.
Well, Citadel
Right.
provides 40% of Robinhood's business effectively.
Yeah.
So Citadel.
I thought.
So
wait,
now
okay.
now
I
there's
thought
a
all
massive.
this, I thought all this came out today.
Right,
So
yeah, no,
What's
it-
happened like most recently though? Like what's been the most?
Yeah.
Like,
So what's just happened? What Tommy just read is congressmen and
official
other congressmen formally submitted complaints that this is fucked up.
To the
Obviously
Attorney
this is
General.
not something real that has happened yet, other than congressmen signaling. But
Right.
I mean, people are up in arms, and like there is clear manipulation. Like, this is breaking the law. So let's see how much the law will bend here.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
this is what
I
I
was-
It's
Yeah. Sorry.
it's
No,
crazy.
this is what I was saying earlier today. Like, the narrative here is in the favor of the Wall Street bets guys. It's unlike, say, with the storming of the Capitol or something like that. But regardless, I don't really see this as necessarily. Although I would need to see the letter myself. But most likely, if Congress is going to get in here to try to fix this, or I don't know if they want to change the law, or if they want prosecutions. If they want prosecutions, that's one thing. But if they want to fix this,
They should prosecute.
The language says-
that's what they should do.
The language says
prosecute is what they
demand
should do, 'cause
action.
they've already been breaking the law. They were already breaking law before by
Right.
short selling more than the actual float of the stock of the company. That's what they should do. Enforce the laws that are already on the books. But I'm
Right.
afraid of is I don't want Congress to get in there and change the laws. The laws don't need to be changed. They're pretty much fine. It's
Right.
It's well,
So
it's
what it
weren't
says,
being enforced.
it says that the events that have unfolded on Wall Street, they're demanding action from the U.S. Department of Justice, and they explain Robinhood halted the purchase of stocks for several publicly traded companies, including GameStop, BlackBerry, AMC, and others. This unilateral move was done so in a concentrated effort to deplatform and silence individual investors. So that's the first paragraph of this 3-paragraph letter.
I'm on board with that. That's
Right.
fine if that's what they want to do. Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see this quickly, which from the government you don't expect them to act in the same day.
And Kiara, before she left, she actually sent us a article. I can't read the article, unfortunately, because it's behind a paywall.
Yeah.
But I read the headline, and I think the point of what she was sending was to counteract what I had said earlier about there being. Did I?
The liquidity problem.
Yeah. So
Okay, I thought-
here's the thing.
basically they're saying Robinhood didn't have any liquidity problems, which is what I was saying before, which they may have. I don't know.
So yeah, here's what's up. Like, I think that it is, to anybody watching that doesn't that's on the fence on whether or not that they did anything wrong. Like, yes, exchanges have had times where they have bandwidth issues or they have liquidity issues. That does happen. It's happened in all markets, but this was not one of those situations where it's not like, oh, like we're out of GameStop shares for you to buy. It wasn't like that. It was intentionally So Citadel buys order flow from Robinhood, and that is Robinhood's largest source of income. Order flow meaning that Robinhood Citadel, this massive hedge fund, sees all of the trades that normal people like you and I are making on Robinhood before they even get executed. Right. And they can act on that information and on those trades before ours get filled. And so they run these HFT algorithms, or high frequency trading algos, at a millisecond time frame. And so in the 4 or 5 milliseconds that they have to get into the trade before it gets filled for us, they do that. And that makes them a shit ton of money. So they did that, and
not illegal. That part's not illegal, as far as I know. That's totally legit.
So, well, they got fined $700 million for doing that before, and they cannot. They're not supposed to be doing that. They're not, because that's front running, right? That's like, if you're somebody that's supposed to be executing orders on behalf of another party, you should not be you can't use that information to boost your own positions or to get into a position before you execute that order.
You're insider trading at that point too, right?
Right.
No, but they can get that information. They can get the trading information. That part's legal.
That's not illegal. They can get the information, but they shouldn't be acting on it before they act. And so that's like mistake number one. Number two is like, so, okay, the company that, or like this other fund, Melvin Capital, they're the ones that got blown up because they were, 130, they were super short on GameStop and it went to the moon. They got blown up. Guess who bailed them out? Citadel. The same fund is literally playing both sides of this, and they bailed them out. Right. Invested a bunch of money in them at like a fire sale, basically. And then now that Citadel is like, oh, we have a stake in this guy that's shorting Bitcoin, or sorry, that's not Bitcoin, that's shorting GameStop. Then the next day, and this is purely like speculation, but I feel like they basically held a gun to Robinhood's head this morning and were like, hey, no more buying GameStop, no more, because otherwise they would have been overexposed and they would have gotten pretty fucked as well. And what is Robinhood going to do? 40% of your revenue is telling you have to do this.
So did they cover their asses with these other
They could have been bankrupted. They were like, we have to play this shot. They had no choice. They had to go for it because and I know naked shorting is illegal. I said that earlier, actually. I said if they're shorting more than the actual float of the stock is, then that they're doing something illegal. The point I was making is it's already illegal and they haven't enforced that law.
What I hope doesn't come out of this are more protections for the consumer, right? That's like the very
That's what's going to happen. That's exactly what's going to happen is retail investors are stupid. Look at how much the stock dropped. We're going to totally rewrite history and say, we didn't keep you from buying it. That's not why it dropped.
The problem was that too many normal people got 99% involved.
of its value, and then boom, and then they're going to say, this is why retail investors just should not be in the market.
Can we define what a retail investor is? It's just a person with a bank account.
Yeah, just a normal person.
Just any person that has access to money.
Yes.
So. If I can jump in real quick with one thing, parsing, the Seeking Alpha articles that I've been reading and, everything that I understand, I think the smoking gun here is that Tenev, or whatever his name is, the CEO of Robinhood, jumped on CNBC and said, there was no liquidity issue. This was done preemptively. That's like his quote about this. At the same time as, everyone was speculating that this was being, done because their brokers, or the people who were the clearinghouses, the ones who were actually executing these trades, were running into a real liquidity issue. And so the fact that, they are saying that there was no liquidity issue, kind of like removes the only logical reason that you would suspend trading on this, unless this was an attempt to counteract what you saw as market manipulation. And the question now becomes, is a group of 4.5 million market participants doing something? Is that market manipulation, or is that just the market? And then second is, if you start actively going against that as a single entity, are you now the market manipulator?
Yeah.
And so I think this is the question that's going to come out. This is the smoking gun, in my opinion.
They overplayed their hand. I mean, I knew they overplayed their hand as soon as they said they halted trading on Nokia and GME. I knew they had overplayed their hand, and that's what happens.
Here's what pisses me off. Here's what pisses me off the most about this entire situation is like, and I kind of agree that unfortunately I feel like consumer protections will come out about this. But where the fuck were the consumer protections in 2008 when like our parents lost hundreds of thousands of dollars and the banks?
They don't give a shit.
They don't give
They
a
do
fuck.
not give
They don't
a
give a
fuck if you lose money. They do not give a fuck.
This
the
is
fact that it's there for consumer protections and they're there to help you to keep you from losing money.
Help us protect you.
Bullshit.
Dude,
Let us.
literally-
How I
it's a
feel.
it should be a free market, right? If I have money and I want to YOLO it on, GameStop
Of
calls
course.
that are deep out of the
Make
money,
it rain, baby.
fucking do
If
it.
you want to be an idiot, do it. I don't care. Why would I care?
It's and the other thing is like the nerve of regulators and of the talking heads on CNBC, except for Chamath, to say that the retail investor is not smart enough and the retail investor shouldn't be investing in this. Dude, it was a retail investor that found out your ass was exposed 140%.
Exactly.
I just wish they would stop saying retail investor.
It's
Just say an
just-
average
it's-
person.
The normies, baby.
No,
It's
no,
the
retail
normies
invest-
versus the hedgies.
No, retail investor is not. It's not a slur. It's actually a legitimate term. It as opposed to institutional. When you say retail, you just mean it's just like me or you, anybody. It doesn't
Sure.
mean that they're.
But to the average person, like they don't understand that what we're referring to is like potentially you. You know, like it's like you versus them,
I'm a retail
us
investor.
versus them.
We're all retail investors.
Right,
That's what I'm
There's
saying is,
retail
like,
investors and there's institutional investors.
it's
That-
like
Right.
when we're
There's
smart.
the normies and there's the suits.
Right.
Yeah, it's like when we're
Yes.
smart and we're able to find the alpha in the market and find the mismatch and try to make money off of it, it's manipulation and all hell breaks loose.
Right.
But when Wall Street does it every single fucking day, it's completely
Right.
fine.
There's a plan,
that's
and
what-
if we
Yeah,
deviate,
fuck that, dude.
then
Fuck
we're not
that.
according to plan anymore.
It's like, dude, it's like they can invite all of these hedge fund managers to go on CNBC and shill whatever stocks that they're investing in all day long, 24/7. That's literally
Yeah.
why this goddamn channel exists. But then when you have people using the same information and using the same stuff to stick it to the man, it's suddenly wrong. And what's happening right now is that the playing field has been leveled, right? Like before, the way that markets, to my understanding, works was like you had all these idea dinner meetings where all these hedge fund managers would get together around a table and come up with like, hey, like what are we going to invest in and things like that. But when everyone does it out in the open on Wall Street Bets and they're happy to post their loss porn of losing $50,000 or their gain porn of gaining $50 million, then all of a sudden it's illegal. And that's what makes me mad is you can't have the double
Yeah.
standard.
Why should transparency be looked down upon? And
I mean, that's one of the biggest
That's
critiques
the
about Bitcoin
market.
is transparency. It's like, oh, you're using too much electricity. It's because you can actually see. You can actually make an estimation.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Stark had a
So,
great
wait.
tweet. Wait, hold up. Elizabeth Stark had a great tweet. 2008, too big to fail. 2021, too small to win. Puts it perfectly.
Nice.
That is good.
That's deep.
I want to just have an NB4 moment. NB4, everyone on CNBC tomorrow says, see, we told you so. We were just trying to protect you retailers from losing so much money on GameStop when the only reason that they're losing money is
My
because
God.
they literally, the whole system colluded
it's
to screw the
market
retail investor.
manipulation.
Couldn't buy
I,
it.
It's
I
gonna
saw
be like
Tone
this.
Vase tweet some bullshit like, "Oh look, GameStop is jumping. It's dumping. Like, look, it was all bullshit. Like, are you fucking
I saw
out of your
Tone
mind?"
Say that. Fuck that.
We're-
Yeah, and I
we're
talked
gonna-
to Tone I talked to Tone about that for an hour and a half. And so if you go to Tone's stream earlier today, and Tone makes some valid points. He said that if I'm running an exchange, I wouldn't let people buy that stock because they're going to lose their money, and then guess who they're going to come after? They're going to come after me to compensate them for the money they lost. So
This goes
I mean,
back to the private company thing. And this is like,
Yeah.
you can apply this to everything. It's social media. I have the liability of what they write on my
I know what's
private
best for my
company's
people.
forum. Like,
Anyone on
It's-
my
So I
platform,
disagree
I
with
know
that in
what's
the
best
sense-
for them.
Yeah, so here's just like real quick. So I disagree with that because it's not so when the framers of the Constitution, and obviously I didn't frame the Constitution, but I feel like what the common perception is that when they were framing the First Amendment, the whole thing was that if you wanted to express yourself back then, like public speech or free speech, was you go out in the town square and you set up a podium and you say what you want to say. right? Now those town halls have become Twitter, right? If you want to go and express yourself in the world today, where do you do it? You do it on social media. And so if you're banned from the public forum and from the public square, that's censorship. I don't care if it's a private entity that's doing it. If you're a private entity that's creating a public forum, you don't get to pick who can and can't say things on there. And that's how I think about it.
No, we're on the same page. I was more so mocking what's happening today with that. I think it's a complete joke. Yeah, I think everybody should have the right to say whatever they want.
Bran's got a meme for us. I don't think we can.
Oh yeah, I've seen this a few times. Today.
Never thought I'd be tanking hedge funds side by side with a Redditor.
Yeah.
Daddy Musk is gonna take us all to Mars. One more time. What the fuck? That's okay.
The memes have been excellent.
No, it's a good day for memes.
One of my favorite thoughts that I had about, because the entire day today was just like I was just on overdrive, just hammering through everything, and I was thinking just all day long. And my favorite thought that came in my mind was like these similarities that are going on. Actually, I have two. One of them is the similarities between the Bitcoin community, the pseudonymous army of people who are passionate about meme warfare and memeing things into reality is synonymous between Bitcoin, Twitter, and Wall Street Bets. I thought that was awesome. The second part that, today really pissed me off, but overall, my favorite part about today was that so many different groups of people came together to agree on something. I feel like that's something we've been missing in society for so long, and it's just been like months, dude, like pretty much a year, honestly, of everyone disagreeing with about everything. And it's like, finally, let's all come together and just say, hey, this was objectively just pretty fucked up. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, everyone agreed except for Tone.
Everybody agreed except for Tone and then Wall Street. Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I agreed with Tone on. Actually, Tone made a good point. He said that because yesterday he talked about GameStop and Nokia, and he said to avoid both those stocks. And he was right. Avoid them because first of all, they're overvalued. They're being, unless you want to gamble. But I mean, so that I agreed with him on. It's like, just buy Bitcoin. You don't need to gamble on these stocks that are just, vastly overvalued. That I do. But to me, that's separate. That's a separate issue. Saying don't go buy these stocks versus saying that this is a dumb trend. I think that this is kind of my point to Tone today was you can't stop these guys. It doesn't matter if they're autistic.
If he's coming at it,
and there's no way to stop them.
If he's coming at it from like a realism, realistically, you can't buy more of this shit. You can they've fucked you. You can only sell it now. The price is gonna go down. So he was right to tell people not to get in that thing, but he was right for the wrong reasons, I think.
Yeah.
Y'all, let me jump in here real quick. It's been a fun chat. This has been a very wide-ranging. We got a little political. We all expressed our opinions, which is exactly what Drinks and Happy Hour is about. Let's wrap this one up. I want to give everyone a chance to give their last word to the audience as well as plug themselves. Let's start with Kaz.
Yes. So super fun. Glad to meet all of you guys. I think Tommy and Seeker are the only ones I've met before, so everybody else super fun. Had a great time, and so listen to my podcast Down the Rabbit Hole, and buy Bitcoin on Swan Bitcoin.
Let's go.
It's my only plug.
Okay, let's go to Patrick and then Abhay.
Yeah. Patrick, I'm Bitcoin Motorist on Twitter. And I'm living here in New Hampshire. I moved here from LA 5 years ago. So I moved here for the Free State Project. So if you're a Bitcoiner, or even if you're a shitcoiner, because apparently we have a lot of shitcoiners here too, but especially if you're a Bitcoiner and you like liberty, look up the Free State Project, fsp.org.
No shitcoiners here.
Yeah, think about moving to New Hampshire. The first time I ever heard of the Free State Project was at a Bitcoin event where I also met Vitalik, who was part of Bitcoin Magazine back then. So and we have a really cool event that I'm an organizer of every summer. So from this summer, it's going to be from June 21st through 27th. If if you're going to be in this area, come check out PorkFest. PorkFest.com is the website. We have a lot of Liberty speakers like Jeffrey Tucker. We usually have Tone Vase come most years, and we have some shitcoiners here too, so you can come argue with them. So yeah, come check out PorkFest. To follow me on Twitter, and thanks so much for having me on. It was a blast. I had a lot of fun.
Let's go. All right, Abhay.
Hey guys, I'm Abhay. So I'm building something called Rise. You can find us at joinrise.com, joinryze.com. Twitter handle at joinrise, joinryze. We're building the most powerful way for people to accumulate Bitcoin. So it's basically like buying the dip on autopilot. We think that we call it smart DCA. It's basically you hook up your bank account and then you set up either a one-time or a recurring deposit, or you can deposit a portion of your paycheck, and our algorithms buy Bitcoin for you at the best times. Over the past couple of years, it's allocated about 20% more Bitcoin than just a simple weekly dollar cost averaging strategy. It's something we've been working really hard about, and our whole goal is to bring the next 100 million millennials and Gen Z into Bitcoin, and we're building a super consumer-friendly brand. Would love for you guys to check us out.
All right.
Slick website.
Let's go. Join Rise. All right. There's so many Bitcoin only ways to stack now. It's not just Coinbase. We can kick them to the curb. There's a lot of awesome ways to do it. So love to see Join Rise joining that. Let's go to Tommy, Brandon, and I'll close it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. Make sure that you stay tuned to the conference Twitter. We're going to have big announcements coming out. The Bitcoin 2021 conference is going to be the biggest Bitcoin conference of all time, following up Bitcoin 2019, which I think was the biggest Bitcoin conference of all time, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so we're going to do it even bigger, even better. Make sure that if you don't have your ticket yet, get your ticket. We're going to have a big announcement this Sunday. Aside from that, if you're an artist in the Bitcoin space, or if you're an artist and you're interested in Bitcoin and you think that maybe you can make some art about Bitcoin, just get in my DMs. Hit me up. I'm pretty accessible. I want to help you get some exposure. But yeah, it's been fun.
Let's go. Bran.
Hey guys, so I'm bullish. I don't know if that came through, but super bullish. I think that we're seeing even more, cracks in the wall of shining truth. So, it feels like a good week. Bitcoin Motorist, I want to tell you that I was going through some Bitcoin Magazine archives from like 2012, maybe 2013. And I stumbled across like some Ruben and Vitalik articles at PorkFest. And I was like, what the heck is this?
Whoa.
What is this thing? And they were talking about PorkFest. So there you go.
Yeah, I believe Vitalik did come to PorkFest one year. That was before my time, but I think he did. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely very cool to hear that come back up, and it's got some Bitcoin history in it for sure.
Yeah.
So
Eric
guys,
Voorhees, Roger Ver, they all went to PorkFest at some point, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely from
Is
what
that
I was
why we're
reading,
all such
it's
carnivores?
it's where the carnivores came from.
Just from hearing all those names, it's a reminder that the longer you stay in Bitcoin, it's harder and harder to not turn into a villain. So for all the new Bitcoiners
we're
out
super
there,
villains.
try to stay in it as long as Patrick has with staying true to the corn. For me, I'm CK Snarks. You guys, this is Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour. Thanks for this awesome group, and stay posted for another great group